the trillions of cells that we have within our body emanate a light, a wavelength, a frequency that runs within us and surrounds us. And it connects us into this beautiful electromagnetic frequency that emanates from the earth and surrounds us in all practical matter.
Welcome to the Spirits Beside Us podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lippincott. I'm an ex-Wall Street analyst turned international medium, spiritual teacher, and best-selling author. Each week we'll dive into the fascinating and uplifting arena of the non-physical world to help you deepen your understanding and spiritual connection to the unseen realm. We'll also share a behind-the-scenes look with others who've done the same and speak with experts in the field about their experiences. Pull up a seat and let's dive into these perspective-changing conversations. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to another episode of Spirits Beside Us. I'm so happy to have you back again, and I am so thrilled to invite you and to connect with this wonderful guest that we have on today, Dr. Mary Sanders. She's a medical intuitive and a chiropractor who's deeply committed to guiding people on their personal transformation journey. She really focuses on helping people cultivate not only their health, but also thriving happiness and purpose, and really using very powerful tools of energy medicine, energy healing, spiritual embodiment, and meditation, which I love. And one of the things that Dr. Mary works with is she's got this wonderful, internationally acclaimed podcast called Energy Medicine. And that discusses everything that's related to aligning the mind, body, and spirit, really the whole individual, and that's what's so perfect. So Mary, thank you for coming on the show. I'm so glad to have you.
Oh, Chris, sincerely, the honor is all mine. I'm looking forward to having a really heartfelt conversation. And I know, Chris, I already know this, that it's going to be juicy, it's going to be insightful, and hopefully there'll be some moments of aha for all the beautiful listeners out there.
Well, there's always a moment of aha for me, because I have to kind of pull myself out of the muck and go, oh, now I get it. But that's just me. I don't know if that's a senior moment or not, but
it happens in every episode for me. So it
always seems to happen that way. But one of the things that I find with so many people, and I think a lot of people can kind of relate to this, I know I can, is that we all seem to kind of find ourselves going a mile a minute, and we're trying to balance 30 things at once. We're trying to do 30 things at once, and it just seems to build and build and build. The next thing you know, it's like, not only where did the time go, and I find myself not having really done much at all, but I've been doing this for so long that now I feel like I'm burning the candle at both ends, and now I'm fried. That just sort of seems to be kind of the way of the 21st century now. I mean, are you seeing that, where everybody sort of seems to be doing too much, too fast with too little time, and they're getting all burned out?
Yes, Chris, I can honestly say I have been down that path. And what you're describing is a recipe for disaster,
oh, yeah.
Which leads to misery. It leads to misery. Like, you wake up one of these days and you have this revelation, and you're like, wow, I have been working so hard, and you're telling me it's all for this? No way. The return on the investment is just not there.
No. Yeah, it's so tough. I mean, you were saying you've gone down that road. Did you have that experience yourself, where you had sort of a burnout moment, and you suddenly had this realization, I got to stop and I got to change things? What was kind of your experience? What was your journey?
Sure. Chris, I really appreciate you asking. Now, with that, I'm going to say I'm more than happy to share my burnout story with you and the listeners. And I also have a tremendous amount of respect for the fact that I have restoried what it created for me. And so there's a blessing in that. There's a silver lining in all the hardship that I experienced in my physical burnout.
Mm.
So, Chris, what happened? Let me just explain a little bit about my backstory, which will shed some light as to how magnificent my burnout journey was for me personally. And everybody has their own journey.
Right.
But it was one of those things, Chris. I know that we all have expectations in today's society that we will just stay focused on the task at hand, whatever our task may be, whether it be school, whether it be obtaining a higher degree, whether it be entering in the workforce, whether it be growing your own business or working for a corporation. We are innately wired to want to achieve. Okay. So my need for achievement was seeking for that external validation that A, I was good enough, B, I was worthy, and hey, you are amounting to something.
Right.
And so I graduated chiropractic school at the age of 25, and I immediately went into being self-employed. And for any of you that have had a professional training, you're good at what you do, but you don't have the necessary business skills to make it successful. So, but I had, just like all of you, had enough of resilience and perseverance and tenacity to push my way through it. Now, the key and operative word is I was pushing my way through, trying to, climb that hierarchy, that ladder of success. And that pushing is what maxed out my adrenal system. Now, for those of you listening, the adrenals are an endocrine gland that sits just on top of the kidneys. It's kind of like a kidney bean. It's a small gland shape that sits on top of the kidneys, and it's designed naturally to help you in a fight or flight crisis. Right? If you've got a big bear chasing, you want your adrenals to be able to kick in so you can run away from that bear. But in today's world, the society is our bear. So we have that constant threat, right?
Yep.
And if you have that constant threat, what ends up happening to that small little adrenal gland, it begins to fluff up. It hypertrophies. And it fluffs up because it's creating so many hormones. And then if you do that long enough, then it begins to shrink and shrivel. And it can no longer produce the hormones that you're looking to produce. The hormones that I am referring to are your epinephrine, your norepinephrine, your adrenals, your cortisol, your get up and go hormones, your DHEA.
Yeah.
So I went through that process, and as a direct result, I went through an adrenal exhaustion. I flatlined. And so my flatline, for me, I was incredibly depressed. I was incredibly fatigued. I could no longer work out, which was how I got my yayas out, right, for my entire life. I could no longer walk a mile because I just could not recover from it.
Wow.
So I ended up doing a lot of integrative medicine techniques. I ended up doing glutathione injection to help with the gut absorption. I ended up doing Myers cocktails, which were, intravenously feeding my system filled with good nutrients and B vitamins. And I literally had to limit my activities to work, and that was it. And so as a direct result, I can say I emotionally suffered. I didn't have the tools that I have now back then. So it wasn't a pretty graceful period in my life. My marriage was suffering. My relationships with other people were suffering. My husband just looked up at me one night when we were sitting over the dinner table, and I literally was holding my head up, couldn't make a conversation. And he's like, honey, this is it. You've got to make some changes. Otherwise, I'm fearful for your physical, your body, and I'm fearful for our relationship, quite honestly. And so he said, do you think that you could leave this all? Do you think that you could change? And I was like, oh, wow, you're asking me the idea of leaving a self-employed business that I started from scratch and I've been committed to for over 23 years. You're asking me to leave it? And I was like, dude, you're asking me like the impossible. And so I
cut off my left arm.
Yeah, what would I do, right? What's my identity if I'm not Dr. Mary with a physical, brick and mortar type, physical presence. I just couldn't fathom what my identity would be. But you know how that happens. The universe, creates opportunities, whether you're ready for them or not. My husband was hired to take over an international school in Ho Chi Minh City. And he said, should we entertain this offer? And I'm like, oh, wow, I don't know. And I sat with it and I realized that I should be saying, yes, let's make this happen, even though I was incredibly fear driven. And so we did. We sold our house. I sold 2 practices. We sold everything. And literally, I found myself, Chris, waking up on the other side of the world in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, wondering seriously who I was, what was the last 23 years about, and I'm never doing that again.
Wow. So you literally were waking up on the other side of the world as essentially a different person. It's like you literally had to step out of one person, A, and become a different person, B, just being on the other side of the world. Everything changed, black and white.
I went through a huge identity crisis.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's amazing. I mean, what did you find once you were on A, the other side of the world, and B, in this other identity that was no longer the Dr. Mary that you had once been for 23 years? What did you find then?
Yeah, no, that's a legitimate question. I found a shell. I found a shell of a physical being that was void of a spirit.
Wow.
And that scared me.
Yeah.
That really scared me because I was like, oh, well, if I'm not that, then who am I? And if I don't know who I am, how can I align with my purpose?
Interesting.
Like, aren't we supposed to be here, to align with a higher purpose?
Yeah.
Like that had been within my mindset for years, but I fell off that wagon.
Wow. So how did you go from that to starting to connect to, A, your higher purpose, B, your energy, and realizing, there actually is energy and there actually is a chakra system and there's all these other things that I really wasn't utilizing or even much aware of before. How did you open up to not only the other world, but also, the other modalities that you hadn't really been working with?
Yeah, well, I did what any sane person would do. I ran away from Ho Chi Minh City. Now, you're going to recognize that when it gets tough for me, I run away. So that's a defense mechanism of mine. Okay. So I didn't know what to do. So I was like, okay. So I'm here in Vietnam. So now let me run away from Vietnam and let me run away to Bali, Indonesia. And so I left my husband in Vietnam, right? Because he was doing what he needed to do with his new business, with his new school. And I went down to Bali with an understanding that I was going to complete my YTT, my yoga teacher's training. And I had been practicing yoga since the age of 20. I learned yoga from a physics professor in my undergraduate degree. He was from Pakistan, I think. So to make a long story short, I was like, I'm going to go do my YTT. That sounds like something I need to do for myself. So I went to Bali, and for the first time in my life, Chris, I didn't have any responsibilities. I wasn't tethered to my husband or tethered to a location or a practice or patient. It was just me. And so I got a lot out of the training, but what I did was I rested and I slept. And I started to meditate, like seriously sink in to that beautiful veil, the veil between here and there. And I was like, that's pretty amazing. So when I returned from Bali back to Ho Chi Minh, I was like, I need to explore the science behind meditation. So that's when I hooked up with Dr. Talbin Shahar in upstate Lenox, Massachusetts. And I studied with him the certificate in positive psychology. So at that time, he was teaching all about the neuroscience of meditation. And so I learned from him like the benefits neurologically as to what's happening in the brain.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is fascinating, because then I could like link the science to some of the personal experiences.
Yeah.
So I was like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's like one of the things I always, to your point, what I always find is that it's so amazing when you have a personal experience or you undergo something and you find that there's actually a scientific, rational explanation to something that you thought just couldn't possibly be happening. And like either quantum physics, discussing energy and the spiritual realm, or neuropsychology and the physics of the brain, explaining what's going on with meditation. When you begin to merge science and experience, it's an incredible. It goes beyond validation, goes to a sudden aha moment.
And I'm glad that you bring that up, Chris, because as a practicing chiropractor for 23 years, I held space for patients in their healing journey, utilizing modalities that possibly have not yet been verified scientifically. So I've been sitting on that process for years. Right? I would openly admit to patients, listen, I don't know exactly how this works, but I'm here to tell you it just works. And
Yep.
so the patients would undergo their physical transformation and they'd look up at me and say, Dr. Mary, I really don't care if you don't know how to explain what's happening here, but I feel the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yes, I was thankful at that time that I could find the scientific validation to better understanding the neuroscience behind meditation, but I didn't hang my hat up on that. I was having personal experiences that were transforming my world.
Yeah.
So, it was just a blessing. It was just like the cherry on top for me.
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of led me down. Oh, well, now I can hold space for people in better understanding the science, the space between the ears. Let me hold space for people that way. And so we developed a nonprofit organization teaching teachers the tools of mindfulness. And then we shifted from Southeast Asia and moved to South America, to Bogota, Colombia. And that's where the nonprofit took over. And to make a long story short, I got enjoyment out of doing that and holding space, but that was not in direct alignment with my overall purpose. I just intuitively knew that there was something more. So as life happened, my mother passed away, my sister passed away, and I started to have some really incredible energetic experiences. And I looked at my husband, I'm like, I'm baffled. I don't know what to do with all this information. And he's like, just go and enroll in the Academy of Intuition Medicine and see and explore what comes up for you. So that's where I got really heavily involved with understanding how to open up my awareness above and beyond the traditional five senses into the extrasensory perception. And then I learned that I've always been incredibly clairsentient, that I have psychometry that's off the charts, that I have a unique way of clairvoyance, and that I was tapped into some direct knowing of something that was much greater than and beyond myself. So that's what led me down the path of really fine-tuning my skills to becoming a medical intuitive, because I can physically feel and chase symptoms through another person's body.
Oh, that's great. And so that's kind of now led you to the point of being that energy healer, based on the fact that you can feel the energy, you can feel where the problems are, and perhaps where the chakra and the endocrine systems are kind of coming together. I mean, how do they come together? Because I know what chakras are, I know what the endocrine glands are, but how do they come together? Perhaps you could even explain to people what the chakra system is and how it does connect.
Yeah, you're asking me a very complex question. So
I knew that was going to be complex.
Let's break this down a little bit. So in order to have this discussion, the foundation or the premise in which I want to operate from is that we are quantum beings. Okay.
Right.
Our biology goes beyond the biology that we had in middle school. There's now research out there to help support quantum biology. There's quantum neurology. And when I talk about quantum biology, we're just pivoting our awareness back to how the natural resources that we have available to us as beautiful spirits living in a human body, we have access to these healing elements. I'm talking about light. I'm talking about sound. I'm talking about being able to set the intention, the mind, and the influence of directing energy through the body. We've known about this for years, but we have somehow forgotten about it in today's modern world. And so when it comes to light as a quantum biology, a wavelength that is emitted from our physical cells, the trillions of cells that we have within our body emanate a light, a wavelength, a frequency that runs within us and surrounds us. And it connects us into this beautiful electromagnetic frequency that emanates from the earth and surrounds us in all practical matter. The chakra system is a sequence. It's not new. It's been in the Vedic sciences for God knows how many years. A chakra is defined as a wheel, and I'm going to extrapolate and say really it's kind of a vortex. It's a vortex of energy. And for today's conversation on the podcast is we're going to refer to the 7 lower chakras, the ones that are most intimately connected into the physical body. And we're going to talk about how we can, the purpose of these energy center is threefold. It is to receive information from our environment. We assimilate the information. And then we express our life force energy out into the world. So when we talk about, and Chris, I know you're holding space for all of your listeners on your podcast to tap into that unseen frequency. Know and trust that it is part of something bigger, that it allows us to show up in our essence and radiate our essence into this beautiful world. That's what you stand for. That's why you're here communicating with me today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just simply, it's so natural and so organic and so simple, yet we as humans make it so complex because we can't see it.
Right. Exactly.
We can't see it.
Yep. And we're also conditioned to ignore it, conditioned to be more material, conditioned also from the ego mind to say, no, it's just not possible. So I'm going to ignore what I don't understand because it's not something that I can grasp onto and tangibly understand with my 5 senses.
Well, let me tell you something, Chris. I am connected to you. Okay, you're in New Jersey, I'm in Colorado. We're having this conversation through an apparatus that I don't understand how it works.
Yes.
But I use it every day.
Yep, it's like gravity. You can't see gravity, but you sure hope it works, and it does every day.
Yeah. I don't know how my car works. Seriously, I just push the button and somehow the engine goes on and I'm able to go from point A to point B.
Does it matter? Yeah. Does it matter that we know how these things work? No, we're glad they do.
Yeah. No, it does not matter. And that's, holding space, bridging the gap between the hardcore science of what has been proven to the soft sciences that have yet to be proven. And they are in the process of being proven. Trust me on this.
Oh, yeah.
So back to the chakra system. Now, we now know that there are wheels. We know that the physical body has 7 lower chakras. There's so many more, but for the sake of the conversation, we're talking about 7. We know that the chakra system has 3 basic principles, and that is to receive information, assimilate, and to express. So if energy is coming at us, right, and can penetrate into our biofield, which surrounds our physical body, and then gets picked up by our chakra, it gets assimilated. And by that, I mean that there is a spin and there is a frequency associated with that energy center. Then what happens is as the energy enters into the physical body, it gets picked up, Couple of different ways, primarily through a nerve plexus, a highway of nerves that take that energy and feed it into an endocrine gland. The endocrine gland then produces a hormone. The hormone then enter into the circulatory system, and they travel back up into the brain, and then the brain responds by making neuropeptides. Really basic science. Now we add the quantum dimension. We're talking about entrainment, entanglement, coherence, tunneling. All of those magical, mystical processes are occurring within our physical body. It's just nothing shy of miraculous.
Absolutely. Every time I hear these terms, whether it's like the Copenhagen principle or what have you, it's just the magnitude of these concepts just absolutely staggers my mind to the point where, quantum physics is saying, yes, you can manifest, and here's what's going on when you do it.
Yeah. It can be so simple that it's painful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one thing I've always found is that I think spirit understands that too, because they're always bringing us simple messages. We're the ones down here who make things so darn complex.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but we do.
Well, I have a good example on this. Within all of us, we have a somatic intelligence, right? So the soma, the cells of our body have a wisdom, right? It's not governed by the wisdom that we think that comes from the brain, the cognitive intelligence. That's not what it's governed by. But if we can slow down long enough to ask and to listen to what it is our physical body needs, we will receive the information. And again, many times extrasensory, from an extrasensory perception, we're going to receive the information that we need in order to heal ourselves.
Yeah. And if we're receiving it and we know it and we accept it, then we're going to be able to work with it. I think that's kind of where we are today, is that it just seems that not enough people are A, accepting it, and B, even if they hear it, they don't really want to do much with it. I think there's a growing percentage that's starting to understand it and work with it, but still that's a very small percentage of the global population relative to where it could realistically be. Imagine what would happen if everybody on the planet had at least the awareness and the possibility of saying, well, let me try this. How different the world would be if we all began to understand this, as opposed to intensely living in what I would refer to as the dark ages.
I think, Chris, that the more education, the more conversations like this that happen in today's world, it's going to open up the lens for people, the possibility for people to lean into this. It requires a tremendous amount of accountability. And if you really think about it, it's super exciting because there's a sense of empowerment. We take our power back. Right? We're going to take our power back, where in the medical world, we have been conditioned over time to give our power away to another practitioner. Now we're going to say, hey, time out. I'm thankful that there are drugs available. I'm thankful that if surgery is necessary, we have that. But I'm going to empower myself to lean into the quantum physics, quantum biology, and lean into some of the natural resources that we have available. I'm going to choose to be barefoot 10 minutes a day on the earth. I'm going to choose to put my hands on the earth. I'm going to choose to meditate. I'm going to choose to be more grateful. I'm going to choose to stand underneath a waterfall. I'm going to choose to tap into my parasympathetics and slow down more. Those conscious choices are incredibly empowering.
Yeah. That's so true. Is that we thought we've either given away that power, or perhaps it's been taken away from us, given, due to big industry, big fill in the blank, whatever industry it happens to be. It seems like that's been perhaps a combination of taken away, and we voluntarily said, oh, okay, it sounds better. You go with it, as opposed to our trying to retain that power of being able to heal ourselves, being able to work with our own power that we're able to help ourselves. It's gotten to the point where it seems so many people want to have the magic pill. They're like, well,
Yeah.
just give me something, and I won't have to work as hard.
Right, right. But we have been conditioned, right? None of us fall victims. None of us, and my premise is this, that Chris, we all come from a place of wholeness. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are broken. None of us are fractured. None of us need to be fixed.
Right.
But we have been inundated by big pharma. If you think about energy follows thought, well, a lot of money, which is is energy, has been thrown into a multi-billion-dollar industry, big pharma, that is conditioning us subliminally and consciously, telling us that this is the only way.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're starting to say, no, we know that this is not the only way. So that is one option. And thank you. No, I'm choosing a different one.
Yeah. I'm into that. It's like there are some people saying, "Oh, that's just the conspiracy theory." And no, it's not really a conspiracy theory. It's kind of reality, and here's how it lays out, and here's how we can take back that understanding that we are in control. I mean, the amount of just inner healing that can be done just with 10 minutes of meditation every day would wipe out so many requirements of any kind of meditation and make people whole. Just that alone would be, to your point. I mean, you began doing that yourself. The power of meditation is huge.
Yeah, it is. And I've learned more information from that. So I'm going to share with, and again, I'm a person that if I can share wisdom with you that makes your life easier, and again, this is just my humble experience based upon holding space for other people in my own personal journey. But when I fully really tapped into grounding and meeting and greeting the frequency of Mother Earth, I kid you not that this is the most nurturing, loving, caressing, satisfying, sustainable energy that we have available to us. And it's free of charge.
Yes.
So if we can, and to know and to trust, and when I say trust, I'm talking about capital TRUS, trust that Mother Earth is always ready, willing, and able to receive any discordant energy from us. And what she does with it is she literally pulls it away from your auric field or your biofield in your physical body, and she pulls it far away from you so that she can do her composting, she can do her magic, and so that she can provide the proper electrons into whatever this discordant energy is, so that it is a resource to another person in the future.
Yeah.
So releasing and grounding was the first thing, right? Then what I learned is that we are, myself, I'm a highly sensitive person who picks up the energies of other people, places, and things. I'm also somebody who has taken on the responsibility of caring for others. So that meant that I thought it was my job to take on somebody else's pain or discordance or emotional burden and carry it as my own to lessen the burden for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've learned over the years is that it is empowering to gift back that person their energy, but more empowering to rightfully retrieve the energy that belongs to me. So if we can mutually separate, if there is a separate identifiable way that we can say what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine, then that creates a container that we can then hold sacred to shine our brightest in present time. So that means getting rid of all the baggage that came before in previous lifetimes and retrocausally affect those lifetimes, and also prime the future lifetimes that have yet to come. So when we can be in present time, then that aligns us into our pure essence.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like, and it really sounds like also some of the things you're saying are align with the concept of an empath needing to be the barrier, having a barrier up so they can allow the energy to be contained within the other person as opposed to absorbing it like a sponge, because you have to be able to maintain your own clear energy and clean energy and say, I'm empathetic towards you. I love you. I feel you, but I don't want to take on all of your energy. I want to help you. But there's a point at which we need to separate our energies here.
Yeah.
And the other thing you mentioned was the concept of, the grounding. There's science that the Earth gives off the electrons, whereas we are giving off, somebody's giving off positive electrons. Somebody else is giving off negative electrons or charging. I forget exactly the science, but it's something where the Earth is giving off the exact opposite of what we're giving off. And so it's actually magnetically attracting all of the negative energy that we have. And once it goes, down to the core, it recycles that energy and neutralizes it. And it comes back as neutral energy, which, as we're getting rid of all the energy that we no longer need, that's cleansing unto itself. And then you match that with meditation. It's like you've just had like the world's best sauna.
Yeah. And you're exactly right, Chris. And that the earth works as an antioxidant.
Yes.
And so we know the principle behind the antioxidant theory. And you're talking about free radicals and electrons being dismissed from the physical body. And then in turn, your body has less inflammation. Right. And the inflammation is the foundation for most of the American or westernized diseases within the body. It creates more mental clarity, less fogginess. It creates, this can only be established if you've got true energetic boundaries. And there's so many misconceptions when it comes to boundaries that people think it's a bad thing. And quite honestly, it's just the opposite. It's healthy. It's healthy to have those energetic boundaries.
Right. And one question I often get is, well, if it's either raining or if it's snowing or I can't go outside and connect with the earth and ground, then what am I supposed to do? And I always say, if you have a houseplant, hang around the houseplant for a while. That's nature. You've got nature all around your house. You just don't even realize it.
Yeah. And that's so true. We have it so accessible. And don't forget, the notion that energy follows thought.
Right.
And that's a quantum principle. So if I'm saying to myself, just this past weekend, we had sub-zero temperatures here in Colorado and Boulder. And so I was like, oh, wow, that earth, boy, she's frozen. She's pretty hard. How am I going to find her? How am I going to connect with her? And I was like, Mary, just sit and meditate and ground. And so setting the intention to meet and greet the frequency of the earth, I know that I was grounding myself to that beautiful Schumann's resonance of 7.83 hertz just by setting the intention. And so my central nervous system begins to follow, and I tap into being more in parasympathetic dominance versus sympathetic dominance. It's just a beautiful cascade of events.
Absolutely. And that follows the whole concept of thoughts become things. All that we are as a result of what we have thought, as Buddha said, and that's so true. If you are thinking positive thoughts, you will generate positive actions. You're creating your own reality. That's why the reality that you think you see out there is more of an illusion, because it's whatever it is that you're creating. You're emanating those thoughts, and you're emanating that illusion that's out in front of you. And somebody says, I didn't cause that car crash. I beg to differ.
And you keep using the word emanating, and it's those unseen wavelengths we're talking about, folks.
Exactly. It's all about the energy. And that's bottom line. That's what it is, because it's the example I always use. If you have the carbon atom and you go to the carbon atom, you look at the nucleus of the carbon atom, you blow it up to the size of a golf ball, its electron would be 2 miles away. Everything else is empty space. And we're like, what? Empty space? Yes, everything is empty space. 99.9% of everything is just energy. It's filling empty space. We're not material, although it certainly feels like it.
So true. So true.
So the biofield you were talking about, getting to further into energy, is the biofield something that we might also refer to as the aura, and the auric field, and that's also the seven layers of different energy frequencies.
Yes, it is. And again, depending upon who you talk to, you're going to hear different words, but in my world, they're pretty interchangeable. And so when we think about other people, places, or things, let's group those collectively and call them the environment. When the environment sends energy at us, right, it has to penetrate our boundary. So that seventh layer of the auric field. And the only way that energy can enter into our field is if we allow it, right? If we're not
Hmm.
taking up our own space. So there can be holes, perforation, tears, big sections that are not covered or protected. I've seen this when I hold space for people energetically as a medical intuitive. But the bottom line is that we, as beautiful spirits in our human home, we need to be really protective. We need to do the hygiene necessary for maintaining our boundaries in the container that surrounds us. It is our responsibility to do that. Nobody else is going to do that other than you.
And is that there's the old saying, as within so without, as without so within. It's also true, if I understand it correctly, that all the diseases and problems we might see emanate or come to being in the physical body first start in the auric fields and the different layers. Is that something that you've also experienced, where you see the tears, you see the problems? It's manifesting in the energy field, energy layers first, and then later manifesting in the physical being.
I agree with that 100%, Chris. And the way I describe that to my patients is that the physical body is the most of the energetic systems that make us up. It's the most dense. It's what's matter, right? It's like you talk about, your it's not empty space, it's physical matter, even though, we're talking about the quantum physics that surrounds us. So when your physical body starts to show the signs of degeneration or dis-ease, it had to have traveled through the energetic biofield in order to penetrate into the physical body. Now, I'm going to take it one more step. Well, what if somebody, I get this question, well, okay, Mary, what about the hereditary diseases?
Hmm.
I have a genetic makeup of a certain or a predisposition to a certain disease. I say, yes, you have that within your DNA, within the trillions of your cells. But the frequency of the energy that travels throughout your body and surrounds you is what will express that recessive gene and demonstrate the disease or not. Are you going to align with the expression of it, or are you not going to align with it? So I get challenged when I say, yes, all disease happens within the energy field and then shows up within the physical body. That's my belief system. I know I'm stretching some of the imaginations of the listeners, and that's okay. I'm planting seeds for further and additional education down the road.
Right. But it's also the fact that, you're talking about energy, and since we control our own energy, and thoughts are nothing but energy, as we think, therefore we are. You can make that argument, quite readily. And even though mainstream science will say, "Oh, that's hogwash. You can't possibly know what you're talking about." Well, they don't know much about energy either, I guess.
I think it's interesting that if you ask somebody, how long do you expect to live? Most often people will say, well, my dad lived until he was 82. My mom lived until she was 78. So I figure I'm good until I'm at least 80. They think about the genetic expression more than the environment in which they surround themselves with.
Right. Or
And
their
so,
own, or their own thought. I mean,
right, right.
somebody. I mean, their parents could live one age, and you might live 40 years beyond that.
Yeah. And we now know the availability of the natural resources and the impact that it makes on our the integrity and health of our cells.
Hmm.
So it's just, I don't know, Chris, it's just so simple to me. And yet we make it so complex.
We do. It's almost. Sometimes I feel like it's almost by design. Like the large industries are trying to make it so complex to obfuscate the obvious.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Just a thought.
And Chris, like you, I'm holding space for something that is forward thinking, or perhaps may not be mainstream. And you and I share that common thread. As a medium or somebody guiding others on their spiritual journey, you're typically dealing with the unseen. And so, what we know, we get to hold this space. We're regular people, right?
Yeah.
You said you came from Wall Street. Well, I came from a heavy science background.
Yeah, there you go.
But we are conduits for holding that space to bridge the gap between what is proven and what has yet to be proven.
Right.
And with that, Chris, comes a tremendous amount of opportunities for healing and transformation and better understanding the spirit world and the messages that are being delivered to us.
Yeah, and it's like back in the Middle Ages, they thought the Earth revolved, the sun revolved around the Earth, and they're like, oh, to say otherwise is heresy. Well, it held that way until they found out it was otherwise.
So true. What little do we know?
Little do we know, and I know at some point we'll find so much more information as time goes by. Well, in our closing moments, what one piece of advice do you think you might give a listener who's listening in that you think would be really useful to them?
Well, I shared with you my aha of what I've been seeing and witnessing personally and for others, and that is the triad of grounding and being able to neutrally separate and being in present time consciousness. Those three things I believe are the foundation for most transformation. That's why I start all of my energy clients with. And so I created it's an audio of 3 meditations to help support those 3 different systems. It's free of charge on my website. For those of you that are interested, just go and just download them and start listening to them, and you'll begin the journey.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Well, Mary, thank you so much for being on the show. This was not only revealing, but just wonderful connecting with you and hearing your journey and hearing everything that you've been able to share to everybody so far. So thank you.
Oh, you are so very welcome. Sincerely, I appreciate you holding space and inviting me to be a guest, and for the open-heartedness and open minds of all of your listeners.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you all for listening to today's episode. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. I learned so much. It was so useful, and there's so much information on the show notes. And I think Mary was talking about the her website and her meditations, and that'll be on the show notes. All those links will be there. And, if this is something that you are liking and loving, give it a thumbs up, like it, and subscribe. That way you'll get it in your feed every Wednesday. You won't miss an episode. So with that, I'll sign off, and I will send you love and light. And until next week, I will see you then. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spirits Beside Us. Make sure you head over to the show notes for all the links and information on this week's episode. You can check it out at spiritsbesideus.com. If you love this episode as much as I did, head over to rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're looking for a community of spiritual seekers like yourself, make sure you join my Facebook page, Spirits Beside Us Podcast on Facebook. This is Chris signing off, sending you love and light. I can't wait to connect with you again on Wednesday.